Hi, this is the Brad Power, and this is the Cancer Patient Lab. And today we're very excited to have Russ Hollyer with us. Russ has done sessions before. He's one of our extreme versions of citizen scientists. He's been running experiments on himself for some time using bipolar androgen therapy and monitoring his testosterone and his PSA and a lot of other stuff. And he has stuff to report there. But that's not what we're going to be talking about today. Today we're going to be talking about how he's used AI to help guide him in his N of one personalized, unique approach, which is pretty cool, and how the AI has helped him be able to do that. Before we get started, just a few housekeeping items, which are our standard things. First of all, this is not medical advice. This is for information purposes only. We try to arm our patients and caregivers with information that they can take to their medical team. Secondly, everything here will be made public. So if you're concerned about your image or what you might say being made public, you can change your name, turn off your camera, and not say anything. And finally, we are a nonprofit 501c3 and appreciate any donations that anyone would make that allow us to provide these kinds of services. And with that, I'll turn it over to Russ. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Oh, Brad, can you let me share my screen?
Oh, yeah, sure. Uh,
And Russ, your
right.
camera is not on, just for information.
Oh,
Yeah,
my camera's not on. I'm trying to save my bandwidth. I'm traveling. I'm in Sedona, and I'm in West Sedona. If you're familiar with it, it's the internet reception is really sketchy. You guys are sometimes stopping, for example.
What I've learned, Russ, is I've made you co-host, which is thanks to Rick Davis, who's one of his colleagues showed. That allows us to control who has access to screen sharing. So you're now a
Okay,
co-host.
don't get the Zoom bombs. Okay, awesome. That's it. Go.
There you go. It's working. Yep. You and Arnold.
How do I make this full screen?
Bottom right there, the thing that looks like a easel. There you go. That one. One more to the right.
This one?
To the right. Two more to the right. Two more to the right. The one that looks like an
Okay.
easel. That one. Yeah.
Awesome.
Click on
Thank
that.
you.
Should do it. There you go.
Okay. So first of all, I want to, because I know Rick is going to jump in and Alan too, and I'm anticipating that. This is not validated. This is, think of it like reading a book. You read a book for information. You don't have to have your brain validated. You don't have to have the book validated. You can read good books and bad books. So when we look at our cancer care, we look at our testing and where we want to go with it and what type of what tests are we going to use, how are we going to look at the results and use them in our therapies, what treatments are we going to do, how are we going to plan our treatments, and how do we make our MOs, how do we ask the right questions to our medical oncologists. The MO is our quarterback, and I like that saying. Tells us, it gives us good information, but there are good quarterbacks and bad quarterbacks. There's a bad quarterback I went to 3 months ago and didn't know what Orgovix was. And I had explained it to her. And then she went on, it got worse from there. So what I have done is I am using different AIs, artificial intelligence chatbots, to summarize NCCN guidelines for summarize my test results, look at my reports, suggest things to me, suggest questions from a medical oncologist. And what I've found with AI is if you use them, if you simply ask them a question without guardrails, they're going to answer that question and they're going to try to please you. In general, most AIs are going to try to please you. So they're going to say that the post I made recently that Rick, you saw about hot water being a therapy. That's an example. I told the AI, I want you to make a spoof post to prove, quote unquote, that hot water is a therapy for prostate cancer. So it came out, it knew what I put it in the guardrails. I guided it that way. But if you ask an AI, hey, can hot water be used for prostate cancer as a therapy for prostate cancer? A very good chance it's going to say yes, and it'll give you a nice looking document and a convincing document to state the reason why. And it's up to you to critique it and frame things such that it's going to keep it in line. Does that make sense? Okay. Oh, and I used AI I made this presentation and then I used AI to go through it and rewrite it for me. I made the bare bones. And I do that a lot with a lot of presentations, a lot of things I write now. I write them up myself, research them myself, and then I have AI go through it and streamline, fill in the gaps, and also hold me accountable. Tell me that I'm full of it. I have a bunch. I'm coming with some nonsense, or I made a mistake. Sometimes that happens. It's important, whatever you find that you think is actionable or questionable, it's important to discuss with your medical oncologist or your medical team to verify what you're finding. And what I like to do is I have found it valuable not to prompt my MO, bias her by saying, I found such and such, or this AI found such and such. What do you think? Instead, I'll walk in and say, what do you think of this subject? So she has no preconceived notion. So in general, about 100% of the time now, when I come in and I ask her a question, she agrees with what I think is what I've already concluded, or what AI has determined for me. And it's very valuable also to ferret out any kind of snake oil salesman or quacks. Like I'm not going to name names, but if somebody sends me a link to somebody who's supposedly a doctor and supposedly is telling them that the hot water therapy, for example, works for their prostate cancer, will work. I can just run it through AI and say, critique this stuff. Give me the pros and cons of this person and this website or this therapy. And very quickly it spits out and it saves me time. I can look at it 30 seconds later and say, oh, well, here's the pro. And one time somebody sent me something and it turned out to be pretty legit. And I was surprised. I would have thought it was a snake oil sales, and it turned out to be pretty legit. And there have been other times when people have sent me information about doctors and I run them through medical doctors and I find out think twice before you follow that advice. So this is all, how are you gonna do things yourself? And AI is it's really coming front and center now. There's for example, there's Artera AI, which is in the NCCN guidelines for prostate cancer. It's not for patients. My presentation is more about how patients can use AI themselves. This is a side note, you can with a Pleuropy scan, for example, many large operations like Simon Med have AI they will use for your reporting. They use it sometimes you're going to have to ask them. You might have to call and ask. A human being might report out, analyze the data, but they're more and more going to AI. And the AI, I had a Pleuropy PSMA scan done about 3 months ago, or no, it's 4 months ago now. The results were from the report itself were very concerning. I ran it through AI, and the AI concluded, well, you have nothing to worry about. This is probably 98% of the time, this is tracer in your bladder that's causing this false positive. I talked to my MO, and I did not pre-bias her. I talked to her about, what do you think about the Pleuropy PSMA PET results? And she said, she said, oh, don't worry about it. It's that finding, that's tracer. I found that very interesting and rewarding. So what I do, I feed in documents to the AI. The more information that it has, the better. So I put in, for example, you can see here, I put in my demographics, my clinical history, how old I am, how old I was when I was diagnosed, what year it is, because AI, it doesn't seem to be a universal now that hopefully it will be soon, but right now it's not universal. They know what time it is. They might think it's 20, I think this year, 2023, and I was just recently I was diagnosed 5 years ago. Nope, oops, 7 years ago. I put in my height, my weight, my athletic activities, what I like to do, what I like to eat. Put in all sorts of information. The more information, the better. I include diagnostic imaging, pathology from way back in my surgery, my biopsy. I include all the information I have so that AI gets a very good picture of who I am, and where I am. And I put in my current labs, all the labs I have. AI has my lab history, and it can tell me. I can ask it, is there anything in my lab history that's concerning with my blood metrics? And AI will pop out. Well, your liver enzymes are going down. They were going up for a while, now they're going down. So this is a very good sign. Or your sodium levels for a while, I was having problems with my sodium levels. Your electrolytes are going low. So this is very concerning. You should look into this, and give me a heads up on, well, maybe I should address that. And I put in my genetic history. I have I've done Garden 360 CDX liquid biopsies 5 or 6 times now. I put in the results. The results are pretty much zero. They're nothing to see, nothing to report. I do put in my SNPs too. Those are genetic, and pretty much every human being, whether you're healthy or you have cancer, is going to have some kind of SNP variant, and probably many more than one. Everybody does, even kids. You're so that whereas those are not actionable, an AI Perplexity in this case was able to pull out, and I verified with Gemini and Chat GPT. AI was able to pull out some patterns and say, well, each one by itself is not actionable. But if we look at this one and this one and this one and this one, we see there's a certain pattern going on here. And this pattern is something you can address and something that might be actionable. And I talked to my MO, and she kind of poo-pooed it and said, well, they're really not, nothing is clinically actionable. And I said, well, yeah, I know nothing's been validated, but I'm still going to go with, I'm going to go with what I think is best for me. And we discussed it, and she said, yeah, they might be weak. You might have a weak response. And I put in my quality of life, for example, and what kind of side effects I'm willing to accept and what I'm not willing to accept. In my case, I'm not willing to accept anything that makes me feel less than 100%. So that's pretty much what I've told the AI. That it's nice in a profile to be able to tell that. I don't want it, Alan, for example, I'm not going to do ADT. If I die tomorrow, that's better than doing ADT for me, personally, for me. I just will not do it. I did it for 3.5 months. 3.5 months was 3.5 months too long for me, not for others, for me. That's what I want. And I haven't done this, but you can, what might be beneficial is if you have a smartwatch, put in your biometric data, feed in your heart rate, your pulse rate, your SpO2. I have not done that. I think you can I haven't messed with that very much at all. I think you can get a smartwatch and download the data and then feed the reports into your AI. And maybe you can maybe sometime in the future, maybe you can do it now. Maybe you can link them directly together. So you don't have to be the middleman. You just put on the watch and go about your day. Okay, so here's an example prompt. Trying to read in the sun. An example prompt for an AI, and this is where it gets into, you want to be very specific. Here's an example prompt. You are a molecular oncologist. Use the latest NCCN guidelines. And then what you want to do is state my eligibility for genetic testing, but then ask what guidelines do you use? Because sometimes AI will pull up they're going to pull up 2023 guidelines or 2024. Well, you want them to state what guidelines they use, and then prompt that, tell them, hey, can you find the 2025 guidelines, the May 2025 guidelines, and use those? Those are the ones I want to use. If you can find those, because NCCN guidelines with genetic testing, respect to genetic testing for prostate cancer, changed 3 times in the last 6 months. They changed in November, and I guess it's time's gone on. It's 8 months. Anyway, they changed rapidly. They changed twice this year. Yeah. Okay, so this is actually for me. I'm calling now. This is my information, bladder neck invasion, seminal SVI, lymph nodes, etc. There's my overall score, Gleason grade, or group grade 5, T3B. Surgeon actually told me T4. But I think he was looking at the guideline. The guidelines at that time was kind of interesting. The guidelines were I would have been graded T4 or stage T4 if it had been 2016, but it's 2018, so that's T3B. They changed the guidelines. And that cleared that up. AI cleared that up for me. I did not know that, and AI was one who I ran that question through AI finally because I kept looking at the pathology and saying this is not what the surgeon indicated to me, so he must have been an error, or the pathology report is an error. And I found out, oh, I ran it through AI for the discrepancy, and I found out they changed the guidelines. So they were not, nobody was in error. The surgeon was just going off something 2 years old. So my recommendation, or for me, the genetic and somatic recommendation were strong recommendation for germline. I think I had three criteria met, 3 of them, yeah. Somatic, there was one for somatic too. So I definitely, most people, if you run through, and that's something I would encourage everybody to do with whatever cancer they have, run through your particular state and pathology through an AI and ask if you are using those NCCN guidelines, if you are eligible for genetic or genomic testing, germline or somatic. What type of genetic testing you're in, that's very important, very key. I have found that the majority of medical oncologists, majority of people do not know don't know much about genetic testing. And very often I get guys talk to me and say, oh, I'm Gleason grade 10 and I have metastatic, and I'll ask them, have you had genetic testing? No. My MO would never mention that. Boy, okay, I just pound my head then. I fry a little bit, die inside. And I tell them, talk to your MO, look at that, and pull the guidelines out and show them you should get genetic testing, and lots of it real soon. So what I did, okay, so here's an example of what I did. I looked at my latest iterations of my BAT plan, adaptive BAT, my genetic profile, et cetera, by my medical oncologist again, and BAT research. First of all, I generated the ABAT plan in part with AI assistance, and it's doing it. Once I incorporated AI into it, it became very clearly my cancer regressed rapidly. But I ran it by my medical oncologist and a BAT researcher, and I'm sure a few of you know his name, and refined it. And we talked about it and discussed it, and it seems to be working well. Oh, and the SNPs, you can get those. Those are not actionable. But if you do not have any ctDNA mutations, you may or may not want to have your SNPs profiled, because if you can't find anything with your ctDNA, well, then that's not much insight into anything. And SNPs are cheap. You can get SNPs tested for a couple $100 and get 650,000 of them tested for a couple $100, and it might show you something. Oh, and there I have it, item number 3. There's some evolving research now that show that SNPs, while not actionable today, clinically actionable, there's emerging research that show they're somewhat predictive of your therapies and what's going to be effective for you. And we're in our ctDNA tests, talking a lot about genetics here, but if you're in your ctDNA test results, you might see something SUV. That's sorry, VUS. That's a variant of unspecified significance. And what that really means is we don't know what it is. We don't know what to do with it. We don't have anything identified. Maybe we haven't run clinical trials using this. Maybe we have a good idea, but we just haven't run a clinical trial and validated this. Again, that's something where it's up to you and your medical oncologist. but I feel that you're doing yourself a disservice, or I would be doing myself a disservice anyway, if I just ignored those completely and said, well, we don't know exactly, they're not validated, so I'm just going to ignore them and pretend they don't exist. Okay, well, if I went strictly by validated things, I would have been, yeah, my chances were not real good. And it's very nice. I found that the AI, the large learning models, they can, or large language models, they can run through thousands and thousands of papers in light speed. They can analyze things much faster than we can. And of course, you think of machine and computer programming, of course, you can scan through data a lot faster than a human being can. That's why we have computers. Oh, and here's an example workflow. I copy an article URL, or I say copy the article URLs into your AI, I copy them into my AI prompt, and I ask for a summary of the article and a critique of it, pros and cons, and an A to F quality rating. Sometimes I'll find documents that look good, and the A to F quality rating will be a D. So that tells me probably not very good. And sometimes I'll find ones that are A's and B. Clinical trials typically are A's. And then I'll also ask for recent clinical trials. I personally prefer the last 5 years, but whatever. It depends on what you want. If you want the last year, wait the last year highest, wait the last year highest. Whatever you like. Or if you want to look at the last 20 years, look at the last 20 years. And I typically look for academic research only. I don't want I'm not going to name names. I don't want the fly-by-night stuff from people who are selling things. I don't want that to taint the reason. I want academic grounded research for the most part, clinical trials. Oh, and I put a side note in there. I recently had AI, and it did this pretty fast, and it did for me. I had to look through the entire, for prostate cancer, every single clinical trial that has ever run for prostate cancer, and tell me what the highest, and I don't recall the results, what the report out was, but I had it rank the different items and whether the results look positive or negative. And it ran through for certain things like vitamin D or whatever it was. It just went through the entire database, scanned through every clinical trial, and reported it out to me. And I don't think I did nearly as thorough a job as AI. I spent 5 or 6 years going through those motions. I stopped about a year ago or 2 years ago. And AI did it. I don't remember if it was more than a half an hour. It was pretty fast, though. One warning I want to give you is that they can be very helpful, and sometimes they can be extremely wrong. And you need to be able to figure out the difference. I like to cross-check with at least 3 different models, and I like to ask for critiques and the cons of something. And sometimes I will actually say, I will tell an AI, some lunatic on the net said blah blah blah. So tell me what's wrong with that. I'm the devil's advocate there, so I am like Alan is, right, with me. I'm telling AI, hey, I don't believe this nonsense when it's actually something that I came up with. And that gives me a good feedback. If the AI comes back and says, yeah, it's a whole bunch of hogwash and here's why, that makes me question my thoughts. If the AI comes back and says, no, this guy was actually pretty on to something, that makes me think that maybe I had something there. Maybe I want to look into it a little bit more. Oh, and there's a real example. I thought this was funny. There's a lot of real examples I've seen. Guys post on different social media sites, and one posted a comment to me saying, "My de novo poly," which I'm not de novo. I don't know how he got that idea, but he said, "Your de novo," and he was talking to me. "Your de novo polymetastatic history is a hurdle, but not insurmountable. Focus on trials for oligo recurrent CRPC. Push," this is the part that I thought was funny, "push for advanced imaging to prove current NED, no evidence of disease status, and advocate directly with trial principal investigators." DeepSeek. That's not obvious. Yeah, there is another AI, another thing that was sent to me, something about Zytiga, and you should stop prednisone before Zytiga, and then wean off the Zytiga, which, as we know, is if you deal with prostate cancer, is patently untrue. You should do the opposite, and you have to do the opposite and do anything less. And that's something where medical oncologists, I've caught some medical oncologists telling guys to stop their Zytiga and stop their prednisone cold turkey, to stop them both. Scary. Wonder how many people wind up in the hospital over these. Oh well. Here's some examples of AIs that I've used, and what I think they're good. What I think they're good for. I could be wrong. Other people have other thoughts. Perplexity, I think it's a good one with citations. It's a general. In general, it's overall performance is good. I like to use Perplexity a lot. It explores things. It gives me grounded data. It's fairly fast, not the fastest, and it gives me valid references. Some ChatGPT I used it for, it's very fast. It was more for fun, I guess. Write things for me. If I wrote a document or wrote a little blurb and I wanted to have it spell checked and grammar checked and clarified, I'd run it through ChatGPT, because in a second I get an output, and but now it was making up things. It was making up like febrile muscle strength in rats and how it relates to hydrotherapy and it would tell me, though, the title of this was actually androgen therapy, deprivation therapy for prostate cancer in the CRPC setting. But so totally incorrect, just fictitiously making up names. What I have found, though, this is interesting, these AIs tend to leapfrog each other. It's such a growing field. And when I'm using ChatGPT now, because it does not have as many hallucinations. It does not make up as many things. And in the last few days, I don't think I've caught it. I haven't used much in the last few days, but I don't think I've caught it for a while making up fictitious articles. Google Gemini is good for finding trials and translating jargon, and it's pretty much it strikes me as kind of a standard of care type product. It will not let me, for example, do research on testosterone for a testosterone therapy, BAT, for prostate cancer. If I tell it I'm a medical researcher, I'll just make up stuff. I'm a medical researcher. I'm doing this for research purposes, and it'll still say, no, you're going to hurt yourself. I feel like okay, I'm a little kid. I'm back in grade school. Grok, I have not used Grok for it. I don't think I've used Grok ever, actually. My understanding, it's good for humor and it's sarcastic, and if you like it, fine. That doesn't really. I'm not looking for humor in my AIs. So there's this three of these I've used. Two of them I have not. I have used Future House. And it's very good for coming up with new molecules, for example. Say you want to design a molecule. I want a molecule that will do a molecule, a real molecule. I want you to design a molecule for me that's going to do X, Y, and Z. What's it going to look like? You might not be able to manufacture it, but it can come up with well, that's impossible, or here are some possible solutions, or here is an ideal solution. I have a solution which is going to do all that you want. Elicit is really good I found it's really good for research papers, finding research papers, doing extensive research. Some of these platforms, I think it's Elicit and Feature House too. I think both of them. You pretty much start them off on some assignment before you go to bed at night, and then you get up tomorrow morning, and they may or may not be done. They take a long time, but their research is really good, and designing a molecule is probably, or can imagine, is rather difficult and rather intensive. It's not something you do in an hour. A human being, maybe their entire lifetime. An AI takes them 12 hours. Poe, I have not used it, but it compares the output, and I am going to use that one because that sounds really interesting. You can look at Claude and Gemini, and I have not used Claude, by the way. It's supposedly ethics guided. It has some ethics in it. It might be standard of care. So I don't know. I've looked at, excuse me. I've used Bing AI a little bit for the imaging. It's fun. It's kind of fun. It's kind of, if you want to do something other than cancer, it's look at cancer. It can be fun. And that's the presentation.
Thanks,
And
Russ. Yeah, we've got some questions in the chat, and as usual, we can use the raise hand feature, and I can moderate.
Okay.
Let me just pick up a couple of the questions in the chat. Naomi said, a friend who is a large data expert working in government says that they will take the AI responses and then ask a competing AI about what it thinks about the results. Then it will go back to the original AI and argue those results. So have you tried this AI versus AI approach?
That's what I do a lot. I do that a lot. I will get an AI output, say from ChatGPT or whichever one, or Claude, or what I haven't used Claude, but whichever one, I'll get the AI output and then feed it into another AI, and exactly, and then feed it back, go back and forth and iterate it until eventually they concur. And what I personally like to do is do a round robin approach with 3 different AIs. And I'll do what your friend is suggesting. I'll do it with 3 AIs, and I'll go back and forth with them, and then take the final output. If it's really important, if it's really critical, if it's something not critical, if it's just a blurb that I'm writing on a web page, a post comment, then I might just use ChatGPT and stop there. If it's research, fairly critical, I'll just gauge the criticality of it. If it's really critical, really important, then I'll talk to my medical oncologist about it later. But that's a really good, very good advice, and very good practical advice. Something I do, something that should be done.
From Bill, there's a question: what whole genome sequencing file format do you use?
The format I use for ctDNA or SNPs, different formats.
You say that you feed your whole genome sequence into the question. There's a size limit to these things. What do you feed?
Oh, okay, SNPs. Okay, so my whole genome, my ctDNA, I just feed in what my report is from Garden, for example, which is pretty much nothing, but it's variants of unsignificant. I have about a dozen of those.
So you feed
I feed those, but the SNPs, I have 650,000 of them. That one, I just did a brute force method. It certainly probably is not the Optum method. With the size limitation, I took my entire database file, my DNA structure file, or my SNPs file. It's huge, obviously. And I fed that into a file parser to parse it down into, I think I had to make 100 files out of it, break it up into 100 pieces, 100 chunks, and then feed each chunk individually into AI and ask about that have it analyze that chunk, and then go to the next chunk and keep the results. If it found anything that is loosely actionable or some variant, I had okay, I'm going to track that one, because now I want to look at all of them in combination. So as you can imagine, it took me about a day to go through all that. But if I was doing that on my own, 650,000, I'd still be working. I'd probably be working the rest of my lifetime. So it did save me some time. It was intense though.
Thank you. Which AI did you use to feed them in 100 files in?
For that one, I used initially Perplexity.
Thank you.
And then you're welcome. And then what I did after I got done with Perplexity is I fed in the results from Perplexity, what it identified. I fed those in, those ones that the variants of interest or something of some type of interest. I fed those back into Gemini, and had Gemini spit out its report, its opinion. And then I fed him into ChatGPT and had ChatGPT spit out its opinion, and all 3 were about the same.
Okay. Question from Jeff H. Better to enter in my clinical history directly or upload documents, or both?
I like to upload documents. And the reason I like to upload documents, okay, if I write down my clinical history, and it's just laziness for me. If you remember, if you want to write down your clinical history every time you go into AI, that's fine too. But I'm lazy, inherently lazy, and I like to just write them into a file one time, make a profile document for myself. And it's actually a pretty long profile document. The generic general profile document for me is a few pages long now, and it goes through my lifestyle, my history, my childhood. Pretty much, it just goes through a lot of stuff that may or may not be useful, pertinent, but I don't know what's pertinent. And then I just upload that document and many others. I typically upload 10 documents. And Perplexity doesn't have a file. Perplexity Deep Research mode, or the Pro mode that I have, doesn't have a file limit, so I can upload. That's a size limit, but it doesn't have a file limit. So I can upload. I upload typically 20 files to it.
Roger has a question. Are the LLM systems that you mentioned trained on old data, or are they fairly up to date? Cancer treatment is changing so fast. I query whether you can get the latest info from AI.
That's a good question. They scan through. You could ask them. I suggest asking them what their reference is, their point of reference is. For example, the AI, when I used AI to look at the NCCN guidelines for some genetic screening, I got some output that I knew was wrong and was likely dated, and it turned out it was the 2023 guidelines. And so I asked AI if it could get an updated guideline, and it went to 2025. It went to May 2025. So that's a good question. That's a good point. Very good point. You need to prompt it and ask it. What are you using? How recent the data are you using? Your clinical trials, when it goes through I didn't do that with the database. And now that's a good suggestion. I'll go back through there and look at that. I want you to scan through the trials up to 2025, including 2025, this date, and make sure that it's doing what I expect it to do.
Okay. Alan has a long message here, but I'll read the summary at the end. And I think this is really pointing at your specific case. A negative MRD test, that's minimum residual disease, result in prostate cancer, particularly after primary treatment like radical prostatectomy, is generally viewed as an encouraging sign associated with improved outcomes. However, it's crucial to consider the type of MRD being assessed, the specific clinical context, and the need for ongoing research to fully establish its role in routine clinical practice for guiding treatment decisions and predicting long-term outcomes. So I guess he's sort of handicapping your positive results on the MRD test you're seeing. And what are your thoughts on that?
That's fair. MRD is not validated for prostate cancer. There's a breakthrough device designation. There's 3 of them, but it's not validated. It's not FDA approved. It's CLIA certified, of course. It's a lab test, though. My medical oncologist, she was one who wanted to start doing the MRD testing, and this was well before I was on board. She was doing it 3-4 years ago and tracking my MRD, and it was 0, and then 0 again, and then it went up, and it went up. And Plarify, by the way, said, when I had a Plarify scan, all clear. And then it went, MRD Signatera went up really high, and Plarify was still saying, you're clear, nothing to worry about. And then finally Plarify caught up and said, oh, you have some Mets now, and they're big Mets. Great. You should have listened to Signatera. Well, I could hear Plarify saying that to me. And I talked to my MO, and I said, so you knew this in advance, and you were doing this in advance, and she just looked and she smiled. She didn't say, I told you so, or yeah, look at me and pat herself on the back. But I was giving her kudos, and she knew it, and she just smiled. But we don't look at it in a vacuum. I look at PSA doubling time, PSA velocity. I look at my pathology, of course. I look at ctDNA, any kind of mutations. I look at my RNA results, my proteomics. I could go on and on and on and on. There's dozens and dozens, maybe hundreds of tests and variations that look like. They're all pointing almost universally, they're pointing to the same direction, which my MO confirmed. You're indolent, Russ. She said, you're indolent. There's no that was a statement she made. She didn't say there's no question. That was just a statement she made. She said, you're indolent and you might be molecularly cured. Those are statements from a medical oncologist who is a very good medical oncologist. So I'm not going to take her advice versus somebody else's advice without knowing. I haven't met many people who are smarter than her, sharper than her. She had me on Zytiga in 2019. It wasn't approved for my case. She had me on it anyway because she felt it's best. And then the FDA finally came around. Okay, a few years later. Okay, kind of, sort of. Yeah, we're kind of getting the it's good for you too, Russ. She was way ahead of that. Darolutamide, same thing. That's why I thought it was approved, Rick. She approved it for me a couple of years ago, and then she renewed it the day before or the week before that the FDA approved it for me because she knew. Okay, it's good for you. So I'm going to go with her.
Okay, Rick Davis had several questions or comments, which I'll just let Rick, if you're on, Rick, you can go off mute and ask.
No, the only thing I was going to point out to you is that there's a lot of confusion around the T3 categories because a couple of people introduced a T3C category, which I discovered about a year ago. I wrote that up in our reminder. So we now have in some classifications a T3A, a T3B, and a T3C. So I don't know.
Never heard of a T3C.
Yeah, well, ACS uses it, and I can't remember if it's ASCO or NCCM. One of them uses it too. I'd never heard of it, but it's innovated. I can find the post and I'll send it to you. Like
Okay,
I say, we wrote it up and I have a post on it and I'll find it and send it to you.
Okay, thanks.
Helen, you have a question here. Do you want to share it or shall I read it?
Yeah, go ahead, read it. I'm just trying to.
Okay.
Yeah.
My question is following up on Roger's. Is there a difference between the free or paid versions of these AIs? I remember learning that ChatGPT free was accessing older information, whereas the paid version was more updated. I'm not sure if that's still the case with ChatGPT and with the other platforms.
I do not know the answer to your question, Helen. And universally, I don't know the answer. I do know that the limits on the files and how many queries you can have that are advanced, require deep research, are limited and sometimes severely limited. ChatGPT, there's some small number a month. I don't know if you can do 5 deep research queries. It's some very small number though. I had free ChatGPT for a while and I ran out of queries in
Right.
a day. And then I had to pay $20 a month so I can get access to their computer.
Yeah, me too. I suppose we can ask the platforms themselves these questions.
Yeah, that's
Sorry
exactly
about
what I
that
was thinking
ambulance.
in my mind. That's exactly in my mind, Alan. That'd be a good question for the AI. I ask them all a lot of times. Well, the file limitations, when I ran into the file limitations, I asked about that, the number, why ChatGPT is different perplexity.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other questions or comments?
I have a really rookie comment. I went on and took screenshots of all your slides but one. Are they available somewhere else?
Brad, they'll be available.
We typically host if what happens if you're willing to share them with me, Russ, which is typically everything's open. We will post the slides. We will have a transcript with the slides embedded in the presentation, the transcript. And then, of course, we'll have a video recording and a meeting summary and a transcript. So all of those things will be produced over the coming week or two.
Thank you.
And if you want to contact me directly, ping me directly, I'll send you the slides when I get later today.
That sounds great. Do you have an email address?
Sure, R. Hollyer. I think I can put it in the chat here. Or maybe I can't. Oh, there it is. Okay, there's a button. It's hard working outside. I can hardly see. I'll type it in here. There we go.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And along those lines, if anybody has any questions about prompts, I covered this fairly fast. What I do, if anybody has questions about detailed prompts or my profiles or what I like to upload for documents or any specific any questions, contact me. I told Brad this morning, I'd be more than happy to Zoom with people if you want, chat with them, email back and forth, whatever. If anybody has any further questions, if people have questions, if enough people have questions, maybe it was another CPL meeting, just have a little side one or whatever, or I'll set up my own Zoom meeting.
That's really good. Yeah, I just wanted to add, Russ, that I keep seeing people coming on as if it's the holy grail in my ovarian cancer groups and sharing all the stuff that they found on ChatGPT without any warning that it could be wrong because it sounds smart and it looks smart. And it's like, especially in complementary therapy, where it's asking it to dictate its protocol, and then now it's following it, and it has done nothing like you've done, feeding its background information. But even then, sharing it is just sort of spreading like wildfire in these groups, and people are copying each other. I find it, as I said before in similar conversations here, I find it absolutely terrifying.
It terrifies me too, Alan.
Yeah.
Well, what's interesting is
information. I'm sorry. People send me information from their Chat GPT. I'm sure you get it too. People send me information for their Chat GPT, and just a cursory glance tells me you're 100% wrong, and you're likely going to die if you do that.
one thing that's very interesting, a large number of people here are using this approach, in fact, for their particular diseases. I'm one as well. And to Helen's point, going on and coming up basically with some publishing standards for this stuff, including the prompts where these questions are asked, the process that's being used, the approach. That's something I think as a group, we could potentially pull together some guidelines as to whether or not we can make this stuff trusted. What do you think of that idea, Brad?
Yeah, that sounds like a great idea.
Yeah, like that. That's something I thought about, and I've contacted some of these developers about it, is a library of prompts, example prompts, a tutorial. Before you start using ChatGPT or Perplexity or whatever it is, go through a little tutorial, 15-minute tutorial, do's and don'ts. And we don't have that.
Yeah,
and here's some example prompts that you can look at.
And to your point, the do's and don'ts prompts, especially stripped off from the others. So the thing I liked a lot is, cross-check your idea about cross-checking, your idea about making sure the stuff is up to date, your idea about what mode the machines are being used in, the date that the queries are being asked. Those are all things potentially that could be put inside the prompt to go on and verify some level of, stability and accuracy to the output. And if we all abided by those, we could go on and trade this stuff among each other, more reliably, I think.
Yeah,
that's a good idea.
It's a very good idea, and you can embed those in prompts. That's what I do, and I have and I'll send it to you. I have a template prompt, and I just substitute, say, Orgovix for olaparib for prostate, and I just substitute that, and here's my template prompt asking various things and safety and costs and accessibility, et cetera, and then again, where is this in our NCCN guidelines? What are the clinical trials? And I want you to list the clinical trials for me and tell me if they're complete or in progress or have they reported out.
So I just sent you an email. If you send that to me, I'm happy to go on and write it up. And Helen, if you go on and send me your concerns and issues to what you think those things should go on and cover, I'll put that in there as well. And anybody else here,
I think it'd be great because it would be something I can share, because I always go on there and say ChatGPT is great, but it'll even tell you, because I've asked it, like, how do I know you're not full of BS? And it says to me, actually, I am prone to hallucinations because I'm fed misinformation as well as reliable information. And but I keep saying that, and it would be great because if we do something like this, because I can just post a link to something that we produce on the do's and don'ts with the AI, and and how to do prompts and examples of where it goes wrong, etc., things like that. And it would be nice because we can drive traffic to our YouTube channel and go from there. But there's something like that is lacking. It may be already out there, but you know, it would be nice if we put something like that together because it's getting so out of hand and it's so dangerous. I don't even know which conversation to start commenting on. It's like wildfire. But
Well,
thank
I'll
you very
write it
much. That's
up.
a good idea.
I'll write it up. I'll post it on my website. Brad, you go on and make sure if it passes your muster and review, you could post it on yours. And then we could, and also all these other guys here that are using this thing, you know, if they agree to it, please input. And then we've got some level, a better level of reliability for people whose lives depend on the answers to these questions. I think that'd be a real service.
Sounds good. I like it. And
Okay,
I get your Russ.
we're just about out of time. So Russ, any parting words of wisdom, final thoughts, summary?
Just pretty much what we touched over already. The AI is growing by leaps and bounds. It's coming a long way, extremely fast. I think it's an exponential growth. What's good one day is not necessarily the best tomorrow. And caution, you need to be careful with it. You can get junk out of the AIs. You can get misleading information. You can get great information. You can get very helpful information. Depends on how you structure it, how you structure your queries. And we're going to be going through that. It sounds like we'll put something together. Put some records together.
It's a renal biopsy.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can do it now?
Yeah.
All right. In that case, I will.
I just ran up from. I'm sorry.
I know you're okay. I was just making sure someone was here for me.
That's Alan. Sorry, I can tell that's Alan. Here we go. Oh, how's that?
Oh, I'm sorry. Never mind. Jeez. How do I block this?
Here we go. Sorry. Russ, you finished?
Yeah. Well done.
Okay.
And hacking.
Thanks, everyone. And good discussion, and we'll see you again next week.
All right.